Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to week one in CE 185, menu design and management. This is going to be a really exciting class, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Chef Matthew and I have a lot of great stuff planned out for you. Before we delve into the subject matter, it's really, really important out there that regardless of where your culinary journey takes you, and regardless of where you guys go, be involved in menu design and menu management. So this is a huge topic that you really need to learn. It's not something that you want to learn on the backside. You have to remember a menu is a major financial tool in your facility, right? Isn't that right, Chef Matthew? Yep, it can menu can make or break you. So put your seatbelt on and enjoy this class. It's going to be a lot of fun. Real quick, my name is Chef Warren Weeks. I had to write down what I've done all my life, so I got to read it off a script here. Yeah, a little slow. I've spent the majority of my career, I went into kitchens when I was 13 years old. I've never left. So that's about 38 years of experience now. I spent the majority of my career as an executive chef, director of food and beverage, all over the world, Trinidad and Tobago, all over Mexico, a lot of places in the United States, very large hotels. I owned a bunch of restaurants. I've done a bunch of concepts as well. Now I'm teaching because I don't want to do anything else. And it's time to give back. But I live here in Tucson, Arizona. I am married to an incredible chef. She was Tucson Iron Chef, and we share two incredible children. They're 6 and 7 years old. We call them Pete and Repeat to make it simple because they're a handful. Trust me. Yeah. And now I want to introduce the other half that's going to be working with us in this program. He's an exceptional chef, and I think he's also a wonderful mentor to all of you. Chef Matthew, how is that garden?
Hey man, I will tell you about my garden. It's, you know what, it's decaying right now. That's what it's doing because the weather's turned here. I'm in beautiful, sunny, downtown, just kidding, outskirts of Indianapolis. So not sunny at all. Actually, it was kind of a nice day, but no, my garden, when it's in season, I have great stuff to tell you, and I'll even show you some beautiful produce, but not right now. So I grew up here. Well, I grew up in culinary school. I was raised here in Indianapolis, but when I went to culinary school when I was 19. And prior to that, I cooked in a couple restaurants in Indianapolis. And at one point I was a dishwasher, and the prep cook called out sick, and I went over and stirred the sausage gravy, and it didn't burn. So they said, let's make this guy a cook. So I've been in the kitchen ever since. And that is a true story. I went to culinary school. I also have a pastry degree. And I've been cooking around Indianapolis, Chicago, spent 4 years in Arizona, went to, worked in several restaurants in Phoenix and Sedona, spent a summer in Madrid, Spain, and a summer in Sydney, Australia cooking as well. So been overseas a little bit, done some fun stuff. Oh yeah. I also imported wine for 3 years from Spain. My brother and I did that as a business. So I've been doing a lot of stuff. I cater now. I'm a consultant, but mostly I love to teach.
Thank you very much, Chef Matthew. It's really kind of an honor in this career to have the opportunity to teach. As you grow up in this business, and as you guys find your way into industry and start working, you're going to find a lot of mentors out there, people that are going to take the time to show you the way. And Chef Matthew and I both had that opportunity when we were younger for someone to show us the way. And so now it's our turn to give back to all of you. And that's why we're here to help all of you succeed. And that is our goal here in this program. Before we move on to this week, just a couple of quick notes. I know you guys are seasoned veterans here at Escoffier, which makes it a joy to work with. Just remember, we love communication. Vincent Perez knows that. We reach out and we like to talk to you quite a bit. And we also like it when you call us with any kind of challenges. If anyone has any program challenges, they don't understand the assignment, they have questions about the assignment, they're having life challenges, whatever the case may be, reach out to me, Chef Warren. My phone number is 520-276-6281. It's also on the right-hand side of the class page. Chef Matthew also loves phone calls, but he really likes it when you call him regarding your specific assignment or questions about your grade. He is the man to answer those questions, and I am the one that will answer the questions regarding your assignments. And then, as always, let's not forget the great folks at the technical department, 877-224-8576. They'll be glad to help you out all along the way. They're still there for you, even though you've gone quite far in the program. They are still there to help you out. And one special note, please make sure that you are posting attendance no more than every 3 days, right? Or at least every 3 days. You never want to go into the 4th day without posting attendance. Does that make sense to everybody? So at least every 3 days or less, be posting attendance in the program. You do that by completing a knowledge check, a discussion forum, submitting an assignment, watching a live session archive. So please make sure that we are doing that no more than 3 days without posting an assignment. It is very, very important. We like that because it keeps you near and dear to the program. The more you are in the center of the pack, the more success you are likely to have, and that's what we want for you. So it's very, very important. Let's take a look. Week 1, we are talking about concepts here in menu and management. Has anybody out there ever been involved in a concept before? The creation of a concept? Anyone? 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 We're going to learn how to do that here in just a moment. It's kind of a cool subject. I want to start the class off by taking a look at our assignment page. Am I there, Chef Matthew?
Oh, yeah, there it is. Man,
there
that's good looking.
Yeah, look at that guy, huh? Doesn't look like that does not look like me at all in reality, right? Make sure that you're watching this video each week. It includes information regarding what's coming up that week, some tidbits to help you succeed that week. So it's very, very important information. I also send that out to all of you via the Moodle message. So make sure you take a moment. The video is only about a minute long. Click on it and watch it. Research materials for week 1 are located right here. You're going to read about your concept, and there's some very valuable information. We'll cover a lot of that here tonight. And then there's also a lesson in here about creating your menu, which is going to be your week 1 assignment. And then elements of a concept as well, which we'll cover quite a bit of information about that tonight here. And then thank you very much, everyone, for attending the week 1 live session. I know you're here, but if you're not, make sure that you watch the live session archive. It's extremely important and valuable. And then our assignments are located right down here. We have a template that you're going to make a copy of this week, and then you're going to fill that template out and then submit it right here, which we will cover here shortly once we get to that part. Any questions about our class page? Are we all good there? All right, a concept, right? This is really, really exciting. Basically what you're doing is you're taking an idea from your head and putting it down into paper and then bringing it to reality. And it is, it sounds very simple, but it is an amazing journey. You have to remember what our number 1 responsibility is here. Does anybody know what our number 1 responsibility is? Any guesses? The number 1 responsibility of a chef is to generate profit, right? Because if we can't generate profit, we can't do anything else, right? So as we're generating, when we have these ideas, when we conceptualize these ideas, we have to take into consideration, are these ideas realistic? Can I generate profit doing it? Can I sustain a life from this concept. And those are some really simple questions to ask yourself, right? So you're not going to go down to Skid Row and open up a fine dining restaurant. You're probably not going to be able to sustain yourself, right? You need to really think things through. As well, once you start working on your concept, that's when you have to begin to separate you from your concept. And that sounds like a very odd thing that I'm telling you, but the reality is you are giving birth to that business, and you need to protect and grow that business with the best interest of the business at heart, right? You cannot make personal decisions that influence your business. It's a very dangerous thing to your concept. You have to stay focused on your business and what is best for the business, not what is best for you. So remember that as we are going down this journey. Another critical thing that we need to take into consideration here is our, what is a successful concept, right? And you really have to break it down into 3 vital factors, okay? The first part of a successful concept is the food and the beverage, right? What kind of food, what kind of beverages are you serving? The second part, oh wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the second part of the concept is the service, right? Quality, style, ability, training, etc. The third part of your concept that's going to create success is your ambiance. All 3 of those things have to work in conjunction with one another. So you have food and beverage, then you have your service and your ambiance. It's a pie. All pieces of the pie must be equal. As chefs, we have a tendency to think, hey, my food rocks and everybody's going to eat here because of my food. Well, guess what? You know, there's some other things that are involved in the success of the program as well. So make sure that as we go through this program, that you remain focused on all 3 things, right? Ambiance, service, food, and beverage. Don't conceptualize things that are not realistic. Do not conceptualize food and beverage items that do not serve well, right? We were talking about alligator, I think, here before the class started, right? You're not going to start French-style service serving alligator. It just doesn't work, right? So you have to think these things through all the way. You have to remember, restaurants are buku bucks, right, to conceptualize. The average restaurant in the United States, does anybody have a clue as to what they cost per square foot? Yeah? The average restaurant, to create a small restaurant, like a 20-seat restaurant, simple, in the United States, averages around $3,000 per square foot. If you do the real estate in that, now you're talking about $3,700 per square foot to create a restaurant, right? So when I talk about the financial matters behind your conceptualizing, it's a huge thing. I don't think too many of us here tonight can afford to outlay that kind of money without it being well thought out. So menu management, we have to really stay focused and pay attention to what we are working on. Before we move into the slides and all the other exciting stuff that we have planned out tonight, I wanted to talk about a couple of different concepts to give you guys some ideas that will help you with your menu management and building your menu as well. Right? There's 3 primary types of concepts out there on the market. There's other concepts that we'll briefly touch on. However, the first type of concept is what we call a restaurant. Right? Does anybody know what a restaurant means? Any clues? Right? Well, you take the French term and you translate it into English, and it literally means a place of rest, right? Restaurant means place of rest, and that's where we come to become nourished and fed. So a restaurant traditionally will have table service. It could serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It could be full service. It could have alcoholic beverages, et cetera, et cetera. The next style of restaurant that's really prevalent in the United States is what we call a bistro concept. The bistro concept stems from the countryside of France. Traditionally, the mother would be working in the kitchen. The father would be working out in the dining room, and they serve French country-style cuisine, very casual, very inexpensive, very fresh food. So that's a bistro-style concept. And then the third primary concept in the United States is what we call a cafe. And a cafe will have very light fare, right? And then sometimes they'll have alcoholic beverages. They could have table service or they could have counter service, but always think cafe light, bistro is heavy, and then restaurant is just a little bit of everything. So those are the three primary type concepts. So with that being said, right, if I open up a cafe, I'm probably not going to serve a 25-ounce grilled porterhouse with a 1-pound baked potato and fried onion rings, right? The thing doesn't jive, right? Conceptually, it doesn't work. But in a restaurant, it'd be just fine, right? If I'm going to serve cassoulet, which is a fine French dish, which is braised in the oven, sometimes can have andouille sausage or fava beans or all sorts of exciting things in there. That's not going to work in a cafe, but it's going to work well in a bistro-style environment. So make sure that everything jives together. A couple of things that we're going to blow through here real quick. Beyond those three concepts and that we can be working with here in this class, we can touch on catering operations. Does anybody out there have interest in going into catering? Yeah, Vincent? Okay. As you proceed through your career, you'll probably get involved in some type of catering. Catering can be a big win or a big loss. As long as you are watching your P's and Q's and planning yourselves out, you can do quite well. We'll talk about that a little bit. Food trucks. How many people are out there are like food trucks? Yeah, a couple of y'all? Couple of y'all? Okay, cool. Food trucks are a really modern thing. It's kind of a hip thing. It's kind of like gluten-free today, right? It's the food trucks are kind of the hip thing. Be wary of food trucks. They're not the best revenue generators, and the revenue that they do generate is not the most consistent either. And also think about this: if you have a food truck and your maximum capacity is to serve 150 people out of that window a night, and you're only charging between $5 and $10 a night or per person, right? So you're maxing out between $1,000 and $1,500 in revenue per night, and then you're paying for the truck, the insurance, the food, the labor, everything else. And it's not a lot of money left over, and that's why you see a lot of fly-by-night food trucks out there. They just don't have the capacity to generate the volume and make the money. So you want to be careful of that. Bakeries and cake shops as well. A lot of people, anybody out there interested in bakeries or cake shops? Anybody have an interest in that? Those are pretty cool concepts. They are not the biggest revenue generators either. You got to think about the price of a cupcake at $1.25. How far are you going to go, right? And then we also get into things like specialty shops as well that we're willing to work with you here in this class as well for menu management. Specialty shops would include things like chocolatiers, donut shops, things of that nature. And then one or two other concepts that I did not talk about would be fast food and fast casual. Fast casual would be defined as being a Chipotle, a Panda Express. They have those in Louisiana, right? Yeah? Okay. Want to make sure I'm not talking foreign things here. Those are fast casual, a little bit more upscale. You walk in, you watch them prepare your food, you watch them dish it out. Then you get into fast food type establishments that are things like McDonald's and Burger Kings, and places you really want to avoid in the long run. So those are some other types of concepts that we can be working with here in our class. Let's not forget, we do have two other concepts I wanted to touch on real quick. Another common concept that has a very confusing name is casual concept, and that could be a restaurant, bistro, or cafe. The casual concept in today's market is generally considered like an Olive Garden, a Red Lobster, a Chili's, a restaurant of that nature, where they do offer table service. It's a smart casual dress code. They have alcoholic beverages. So a casual concept would work for this class. And then let's not forget what everybody likes to do, and that's a fine dining restaurant. Anybody interested in fine dining out there? Kind of, sort of, so? Yeah? Oh, Frank, was that a hand? There you go. Hey, Frank.
Fine dining, yes.
Yeah, fine dining, I like it, man. Great aspirations. Fine dining is a very, very tough market because there is a tremendous amount of overhead that goes into a fine dining operation between the type of tableware, the type of glassware, the type of guerdon, the type of uniforms for your service staff. There's a lot of additional expense involved in fine dining restaurants, and that's why we don't see so many of them. And it also takes a very, very large community to support a fine dining restaurant, because you have to remember there's not a lot of folks out there that can pay 30, 35 bucks a meal, which turns it into what we call an occasion restaurant, meaning that you would go to that restaurant to celebrate an occasion such as Valentine's Day or an anniversary, something of that nature. So it's very, very important. Did I miss anything, Chef Matthew?
No, that sounds really good. I got something going on in chat. We've been talking about where's the big money at, since it's so tough in all these different corners of the world. And I've been telling them it's you got to be like an executive chef at a casino, or sometimes hotel chains are really pay some pretty good money. I didn't get there yet, but corporate chefs make pretty good money. So it depends on how big the operation is that you're working for, though. How many outlets or how many other chefs are you managing? Something like a Compass Group, you may manage 40 or 50 different locations in a territory. So that's a different level. You're not cooking. So
yeah,
it's it's what you want, and I recommend anywhere you go, you work your way up.
Right. It's starting with the Scoffier, and I've had a very, very successful career in food and beverage. You talk about where's the money. I've averaged over 6 digits my entire career for an annual salary, which is wonderful, as a director of food and beverage, executive chef. So there are a lot of positions available out there. It's all about where you put yourself, though. It's not like it's like anything else in this world. You can go to any school and get any degree, but it's not going to guarantee that you go anywhere until you put the work and the effort into it, right? There's not a lot of handouts in this world, but I think everybody in this class is certainly capable of achieving those goals, but you have to work to earn them. And I think that's kind of the bottom line. So that's a good thing in the chat, right?
Yeah.
Moving on with our evening here in CE 185. How do we zero in on our concept, right? So we kind of have an idea of what we want to do and where we want to go, but how do we zero in on exactly what are we going to launch? How are we going to do it? And so let's take a look at a couple of things before we get into some specific menu types about what we're going to do, right? So the first thing that you need to establish as the person creating this concept, right, is what type of food and beverage you want to serve, right? So let's say Don there, Don Vacante there, yeah, you're into some type of Mediterranean cuisine, right? And you're caring for some fascination with pasta, and so you really want to kind of zero in on that Mediterranean. Then you want to start creating some beverages that are kind of in line with that. So now you have that food and beverage part put together, right? So then you're going to set that food and beverage part to the side, right? Okay, this is what I want to serve. Now you need to figure out, who do you want to serve it to? And what we mean by that in the restaurant industry, who is our target market, right? Who do we want to go after? Are we after the millennials? Are we after Generation X? Are we after the empty nesters? Are we after the baby boomers? Each one of those target markets eats out differently and has different sources of disposable income, right? So you're not going to target market baby boomers with hardcore vegetarian soy-based cuisine, right? They're not going to get into it. They don't like it, right? So you need to really zero in on who are you going to sell your food in. You have to remember, you're not trying to ostracize anybody, right? You're not trying to prevent anybody from eating at your restaurant. But Vincent, when you go out and you start catering, you're going to have a very specific clientele that you're after for your catering services. Is that correct? Right? We want to cater to everybody, but you can't. You have to have a target market, right? So now you have your food and your beverage. Now you've established who do you want to sell to, right? Which is very, very critical. The next thing you need to establish is where do you want to sell your food, right? Do I want to be located in downtown Baton Rouge? Do I want to be in Beverly Hills, California? You know, can I make that kind of money, right? We have Thomas Keller, the owner of the French Laundry in Younkerville, California, recently closed his Bouchon restaurant in Beverly Hills, California, because he could no longer afford the rent of $100,000 per month, right? So you really need to think this through. Where do you want to sell your food, right? You want to sell your food near your target market, right? Where your target market can easily access it. So now this puzzle's beginning to come together, right? You have to remember that you are getting ready to make a major investment in your career, or you'll be working for somebody who is making a major investment and relying upon you to guide them. So these are things you need to consider. Then you need to decide, what kind of service am I going to have, right? What type of concept is this? Is it a casual, or am I going to have counter service, right? Is it more of a bistro concept? You know, is it going to be real casual, guys in t-shirts and jeans? Is it going to be a formal sit-down fine dining restaurant? You know? So these are things you need to decide once you have made those decisions, right? You have your food and beverage, who you're going to sell it to, where you're going to sell it, and how you're going to sell it. Now you can create your menu and your prices, right? Before that, those couldn't be answered, right? You cannot write a menu until you know who you're writing the menu for. It's very simple logic, right? If I am serving, and my target market is a bunch of senior citizens on fixed income, right, I'm not going to be serving beef Wellington on my menu. No? However, I'm sure I could come up with some creative menu ideas that would really wow these people and really excite them, and they could afford to eat at my restaurant, and I'll make money, right? So the solution is there. You just need to think it through. It's very, very important. Couple of different types of menus that we need to take a look at here in this course, and that you'll be working with tonight. If everybody wants to take a look at the screen, because I think everybody's getting tired of looking at me. Is that right, Chef Matthew?
Well, they could always look at me, but you know, they're probably tired of me too. So yeah, let's do that. Yeah, good idea.
Chef Matthew and I entertain each other on occasion. So yeah.
Sorry about that.
If we start chatting like old people, just ignore us. We are going to move on and take a look at some different styles of menus. And when I refer to styles of menus, I'm not talking about the layout. I'm not talking about the font being used. I am talking about the actual functionality of the menu. So the first type of menu that we're going to be working with this week is called an a la carte menu. And it literally means everything a la carte, right? So everything sold separately. You see, this would be very applicable to a steakhouse menu where they serve the steak, and then they sell the asparagus, then they sell the baked potato, and you buy what you want. This particular a la carte menu that's up here on the screen sells all of the courses differently and all of the entrees differently. This is a very practical menu to have in a bistro or to have in a restaurant or a cafe. So a la carte menu basically means that they sell everything individually or separately, or I'm sorry, they sell everything separately. Table d'hôte menu, I like to refer to this more commonly as being a prefix menu. Prefix menus are primarily created for chef's tasting menus or for special functions. However, a lot of restaurants like to have a table d'hôte menu where they group the courses together. So that means when you walk in, you sit down for one price, you'll get an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert, or appetizer, intermezzo, whatever they are offering at that particular place. I put this menu up here for Mother's Day because this is very, very common in the hotel industry particularly. that for Mother's Day, Father's Day, Thanksgiving, that type of stuff, we'll do a lot of these table to hope menus or prefix menus, as we more commonly call them, that are basically one price feeds all, right? So each person that comes in will pay $40 or $45 per person, and they'll get a choice of each one of these items. Table to hope menu. A limited menu is going to be a menu that does not have a large selection. It's exactly what it says, a limited menu. It's primarily a lot of fast food type restaurants or quick service type restaurants. If you go into a Chipotle or wherever, they just have a certain select amount of items with not a lot of options that you can choose from. And they do that for the efficiency of their service and to maintain their cost. So it's not always a bad concept, right? No. So here, there's a couple of different menus. This is a steakhouse menu where they've done a very small limited menu. Limited menus in restaurants will be served from like 2 to 5 p.m. in the afternoon, where they have a very narrow staff in the back. Or if they're having some type of facility challenge, they'll offer this as well. Or this also could be a very small restaurant with 10, 15 seats in it as well. And then this is another style of limited service menu. What were we going to say, Chef Matthew?
The places I've worked before, we did the limited menu. Like if we knew we were going to have a blowout like Friday night or Saturday night, where we already knew we were going to be busy, but maybe we had a party of 25 and a party of 20 and a party of 19, and and we knew it was, the whole city was lit up, and it was just going to be one of those nights where we were going to do monstrous amounts of business. We would go to a limited menu just so we could keep up, so we could cut back our prep a little bit and streamline service.
Absolutely, that's a brilliant thing you just said. If we have a busy restaurant and we are expecting a group of 20 people on a Friday night, oftentimes we will give them a limited menu in order to accommodate them and get them in and out quicker. And it also provides a lot more efficiency in the kitchen, because we know which items to prep heavy. And we also, on that limited menu, will put what we call quick fire items that we can cook quickly, right? We're not going to put a 96-ounce porterhouse on there, well done, because it might take a bit of time. So, we'll cut back and we'll serve perhaps prime rib, because we know, boom, we can get it in and out quickly. Taking a look at our next type of menu, this is called a cycle menu. Cycle menus are often served in institutional style settings. Schools primarily are very famous for having cycle menus. It's basically a calendar, and they serve the same thing every Monday, the same thing every Tuesday, et cetera, et cetera. Some restaurants will do this with their specials. You know that every Tuesday they serve tacos, right? Taco Tuesday. And so that's called a cycle menu. And here is some examples of a cycle menu. And then the classic California menu, which is probably something that most of us are fairly familiar with. 3 meals daily, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Probably on the weekends, they'll have some type of brunch. Most likely, they're going to serve breakfast all day long as well. And then they will also offer lunch entrees all day long as well. And this is a very common style of menu, especially in more casual style restaurants. And then
they call that the Greek restaurant style around Chicago. All the Greek restaurants have these huge menus with all the meal periods, just like that.
I wonder if the Greeks were to sue California, I wonder who'd win. Because there could be a potential suit on here for trademark infringement.
Yeah.
Right? Because I doubt the Californians want the Greeks using their name.
I know. They stole their idea.
Yeah. There's something wrong with this. Great. Yeah. And then moving on to the last type of menu that we're working with for this week's assignment is du jour, and which means of the day, basically. And I've worked in a couple of concepts that do this, and I love it because as a chef, it allows you a tremendous amount of creativity to work with what is fresh, what is in season, and what you have. I used to run a vineyard in San Miguel de Allende in Guanajuato, and we had 2 full-time horticulturists that worked with us in our garden. And each morning I would walk with the horticulturist, and we would select our Lola Rosa, our baby red oak, our amaranth, our artichokes, our squashes, our squash blossoms. And then we would write the day's menu based on what was fresh and coming out of the garden that day. And it was an absolutely wonderful experience. It also is very, very effective at controlling your cost as far as food, but it can also be very expensive for your labor because you're recreating a new menu each day. So training becomes a big issue, and it becomes risky in the long run. So I have a tendency to hold off on those types of restaurants. Let's take a look here at this week's assignment before I go too much further here. Chef Matthew, did I get all the applicable type of menus there?
That sounds really good. Trying to think if I have anything to throw in. I think I threw some stuff in already though. So
did you? Okay, good. You're not buttering me up, are you? Oh,
yeah.
Telling me it sounded good?
You sound great. You do a great job.
Oh, thank you. Making me blush. Yeah. This, everything we've talked about so far, somebody mentioned here a moment ago, about where's the money. And everything that we've spoken about so far in this class this evening is where the money is. As you progress, as you begin writing menus are one of your biggest financial controls as far as revenue generation is concerned, right? Yep. Restaurants have several different sources of revenue. We call them revenue streams or revenue sources, right? For example, a bar in a restaurant can be a revenue source. The dining room is another revenue source. The catering operation is another revenue source. Grubhub, Postmates, DoorDash is another revenue source. And then we also have the to-go foods, which is another revenue source, and catering. All of them can be within your facility. With your menus that you write for each of those 5 revenue sources, that will dictate, hey, are people coming back? Are they coming in? Is there a value, right? Am I generating enough income to cover the expense of what I am preparing, right? So this menu is going to dictate everything that's going on in your restaurant. If you write a menu that is not copacetic and in line with your cost, guess what's going to happen? Right? You're going to go bye-bye. It's just a simple rule of thumb. Our number one responsibility in restaurants is to generate profit. And it's kind of a sad reality. I don't care, how well great your service is or anything else. If you cannot generate profit doing what you're doing, you will not stay in business. And writing this menu and learning this menu will help you create the proper cost and the proper profit coming in your door. Let's take a look at this week's assignment before we open it up for questions. Am I on the right page?
There it is.
Am I doing all right here? All right. Okay. So basically what we're going to do this week is you are going to take a look at these 3 restaurants. And they're just pretend restaurants, right? So you don't have to Google them or anything. They're just make believe. The Golden Eagle, a fast casual American style restaurant, and then you have Trinity, which is a fine dining restaurant, and then you have Mia's Pastry Shop, which would obviously sell pastries and that type of thing. So you are going to have to write briefly what type of menu would each use, and then you're going to have to write a justification as to which menus why they use that particular menu. You're going to make a copy of this template here, and then you're going to fill this template in. You're going to answer these questions on the template, right? Menu type for the Golden Eagle. What type of menu do you think they should use based on what we just talked about? The information we just talked about is also located in the research materials, right? Why do you think they should use that, right? Hey, the Golden Eagle should use a California style menu. Why, right? And then the menu for Trinity, right? Are you going to use like a table d'hote menu? Or are you going to use a du jour menu? What type of menu and why? And then the restaurant for me is, right? Is it going to be a limited menu? What are you going to offer? So you're going to have to do that and provide your explanations for that as well. As well here on the class rates, that's right. We don't have a discussion forum this week. And we also don't have a knowledge check. Let's celebrate.
Hey,
Dawn down there is like, yeah. Yeah, we got that right. Yeah.
If you guys want to talk, you can text me or Chef Warren. I mean, really, if you're going to miss that discussion so much, go ahead and text us.
Yeah, text the important things, right? What kind of questions do we have out there? I'd like to hear a couple of questions from everybody. If anybody wants to ask about regarding restaurants, concepts, anything like that, now is a great time to ask. Before we get going, let's see. Don has his hand raised. Don, what's up?
I do. Thank you. So understand what you're saying about the menu and the demographics and stuff like that. The assignment doesn't really give us I guess it gives us the option to put those restaurants where we want to put them, because if not, then we would have to do more analytical work. Obviously, we don't want to do any more work than what we have to.
That is correct.
So looking at the menu, psychologically, placing high dollar items without prices next to items that will be priced higher than what people can afford, because we want to steer them towards them buying that product, like whether it's in the middle of the page or the top left-hand corner, because we read from left to right and we flip left to right. So, could you elaborate a little bit more on the
Sure.
Psychological portion of that menu?
We're going to talk. We get into that here within the next couple of weeks. But
Okay. Sorry.
I'll give you kind of a brief outlay, because I think that's a really intelligent question what you're asking. Yeah. There is a tremendous amount of psychology that goes in behind a menu. For example, a standard rule of thumb should always be 40% white space, right? Because if you confuse the customer and you have too much going on, you're going to force them to make quick decisions, which oftentimes do not work out in your favor, right? And you also stress people out when you have too much going on a page. You want your people to make relaxed decisions based on the information that you provide. Now, as far as what you mentioned about price next to item, no price next to item, expensive item at the top, expensive item at the bottom, there's a lot of different ways that we play that. And you are right, because you're kind of insinuating in the restaurant industry, they do manipulate some of those things to get you to buy certain things. And you are right, because there is some manipulation behind there. A lot of places have a standard rule of thumb that, hey, our veal chop, which is our most expensive item, will be the first item because we believe that's what people see when they open the menu, okay? However, the other theory is wait, the veal chop has a very high food cost, right? And it's labor intensive to prepare because we have to butcher it, so we don't generate that much profit off of it. So let's go ahead and let's bury it down at the bottom where we're not going to sell that many, but we do offer it to get that, right? Does that make sense? So
it does.
when you're as far as a black and white theory, the only thing that's really black and white on a menu is the fact that we work with what we call sinkers on menus, and that's pretty much an industry standard. And what that means is if you buy the veal chop at a very high food cost, we are going to sell you something or make something visually attractive to you on the menu that you will purchase that is a very low cost for us to produce. So the two items together balance out to good profitability. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Yeah, so Don, I wish I could sit here and say, the answer is X, Y, and Z.
It's not.
It's not. And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to learn some of the tools that we use to make things happen.
Yeah, and Jeff, you're totally right. And when you look at the theme of the restaurant, I mean, if I have a a very meat focused restaurant, like a butcher kind of restaurant, I'm going to sell more of those veal chops. If I have a kind of maybe a seafood theme, I've got to have a steak, because there are going to be people that come in that want a steak, but I'm probably not going to sell much of those steaks because it's a seafood theme. So, you know, you look at the theme, you look at location. I mean, in Indiana, we're not selling crab legs fresh out of the bay. I mean, that's just not going to happen here. On the East Coast, that's huge. So, you know, you gotta think even location. So there's just so many factors involved there. And just like Chef said, there's no X, Y, and Z. There are so many variables.
And another tool that a lot of us use, the menu is only going to take you so far. Do not assume that your customers are going to be psychological or hypnotized by reading your magical menu, because that's kind of assuming that they're not the sharpest tools in the shed, and that doesn't work out so well. So what we do in the restaurant industry is we drive a lot of those particular sales with our service staff. And we have highly trained wait staff that really drives and helps shape your opinion on what you should order, right? Hey, that veal chop is the most fantastic thing in the world. I've had a couple of them over the past 3 or 4 days, and you know what? The flavor just melts in your mouth. It's got this great umami flavor with the saffron sauce over the top. And then for the next person sitting next to them, they'll turn and they'll sell, hey, you know what? That cavatelli pasta that's tossed with pancetta is probably, oh, the flavor is just outstanding. The pancetta is nice and crispy, and the fried shallots over the top just add, and that cavatelli pasta has a 10% food cost, right? So boom, you know, we just pushed you and we just saved the sale. So that's one of the things. Does that answer your question, Don?
It does. Thanks for the podium.
Yeah, yeah. Mary Lou.
Well, a lot of the questions were actually answered there. But also with the menu, when you're doing your menu, and per se, it's a smaller restaurant that your target audience is at, is it fine to change the menu, for example, if things are not in season? Like avocado is not always the cheapest thing out there. Mm-hmm. And is it fine for you to only have it when it's in season? Because obviously when it's not, your food cost is higher. But if you're not wanting to increase the price of that item, what would be a good per se on that? Is it more of a menu item that's only there temporary?
Okay, the answer is yes, no, and maybe. Right? How about that? Okay, sure. And this is the way that this works. Okay, traditionally, foods do have seasonal price fluctuations. Right, the avocado, for example, depending on when it's coming up from Sinaloa, Mexico, where they're primarily growing, and they get shipped up to the United States, the price does fluctuate. However, if you take a pen and a piece of paper to it, the actual fluctuation is only about 3% per year, right? So in June, you know, you're paying $1, and then in December you're paying $3. So the way we work with it, we work with averages, right? So we know that avocado is probably going to cost us about $2 throughout the course of the year. So we will just charge based on that $2, right? So in June, we're making a lot of money. December, we're not making that much money, but as an average, we do quite well.
Okay.
As far as changing menu items in restaurants, you have to move slowly. You have to move with reason, right? Do not go to your friend's house on Saturday night and eat a dish and then go to your restaurant on Monday and put it on your menu. It doesn't work that way. That is bad business. What we do in industry is we will run that as a special in 1 or 2 of our outlets for an extended period of time, get feedback from our staff or get feedback from our customers. Then we also take that time to train our staff operationally, and we figure out how we can make the most money off of that particular item. Mm-hmm. Once that item has cemented itself as a percentage of sales that is solid and it is profitable, then we will incorporate it into a menu. What we do in industry, though, is our POS systems or any other system that you use will tell you, hey, you know, that macaroni and cheese with mesquite smoked bacon and roasted chicken is only equal to about 2% of your menu sales. but you're carrying a lot of inventory for it.
Mm-hmm.
So then we say, hey, guess what? Guess who's on the chopping block? And then we'll take that special that you've been running over the past couple of weeks. We know it sells, put it on our menu, and then always changing it out.
Okay.
You are going to have people that will come into your restaurant on a regular basis for that one particular item that if you take off the menu, they might castrate you, right? It just people fall in love with restaurants and they fall. I mean, there's really no other way to say that, but you have to be able to make some of those dishes stand. I wrote a menu 13 years ago that is still in place today, has not been changed, right? And sometimes that happens, right? I've written menus that I've run for a week before because they weren't well thought out. Yeah, so all these things, there's a lot of influential factors that go into play. Okay. One thing I do not recommend doing when you guys are chefs, right? You're not cooks. You're not people that have walked out of McDonald's and decided to open up a restaurant. You have received a formal education. With you as culinarians, people have higher expectations. What they expect is your interpretation of a dish. Okay, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, for example, do not put taquitos on your menu. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put your interpretation of taquitos on the menu, right? Taquitos or flautas made with jamaica, right? And adobo roasted chicken with a chipotle crema over the top, right? That's your interpretation of the dish. You are a chef, right? People come to see you, right? And so that's a lot of times what they're paying for. Any other questions out there? One? Can I pay somebody? Chef Matthew, do you have any questions?
Well, no, I do have one comment I could add on the last points you were making. And as for the avocado, I mean, a crafty thing to do for a restaurant is to seasonally change your menu as well. So you don't have to, you're not forced then to have all of those items all year long. I mean, clearly there are very few places in the world that everything's available year round. I know, here in Indiana, we're pulling produce from out of state right now. As the entire United States gets deeper into winter, we're going to start pulling out of Central and South America more than we are now. So it's just the way it flows. So, and it gets more expensive the more further it has to travel, et cetera. So, you do have limits, and changing seasonally gives you an out rather than trying to hold on to something year round and when it's going to cost you too much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I first started cooking back in the 80s, right? Don't tell anybody. When I went to school in 87. When I went to school in 87. What's that?
I was 85, so.
Yeah. There you go. So you can relate to what I'm saying then. When I first started cooking, we could only serve creme brulee with raspberries during raspberry season because the food distribution system hadn't built itself up yet. But we are here today where we do have a fairly decent distribution system. There's three primary ports in the United States: San Diego, Tucson, and Texas. During the season, Tucson, Arizona distributes 70% of the produce sold in the United States. So it just depends on what type of year and what is going on, but great suggestion. Let's talk to Dennis here. Dennis, what's going on?
Not much. I just have a real kind of a basic question, I guess. So when you're making your menu, is it a ratio driven menu, like as far as having like, I want to have so many dishes made of chicken, so many dishes made of steak or fish, etc., like that? Or is it really just up to you and which the direction you want to take your menu? Like you said earlier, maybe you're doing just specifically seafood or specifically like a butcher, a steakhouse or something like that.
Very intelligent question. I love that question. It's a very simple answer, actually. It all depends on your target market, right? And which is the most important thing, because basically, are they going to buy what you put on the menu? Initially, what we do is we do try to have some balance of menu items whether it be poultry, red meat, pastas. That's kind of a traditional school of thought. However, based on your target market, you might notice with millennials, right, which they have a lot of very special dietary needs this week. So they, you're gonna work with more non-GMO foods, probably very little or no red meat, and a lot more vegetarian type foods. So is there a standard rule of thumb as far as 2 chicken, 2 beef, 2 pork? No, but we do start out with a balance based on your concept and your target market.
Okay.
That answer it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if I could ask actually another quick question.
Sure.
You're talking about 40% white as far as the menu, so you're not confusing your customers.
Uh-huh.
So how do you achieve that when you have like the menu that was really full, like the American menu, where it was full of everything, where you're having a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner all day with a pretty big menu? How do you achieve that?
You really have to work on it, and it takes a lot of self-discipline to achieve the 40% white space. If you remember taking a look at that American restaurant, American menu, it was busy, right?
Yeah.
One of the mentality behind that is the longer you stay in the seat, the less money I make, right? So if I can get you in, you can look at my menu with 40% white space, you can place your order, I can feed you, and you can get out. Then I make more money, right? Because every time I turn that table, I make another check. However, if you're stuck at that table trying to decipher, between the wagon wheel and the boot and the belt buckle and between the hamburger and the steaks, you're losing money, you're slowing yourself down. So the white space also adds a certain sense of sophistication and education to your appearance of your menu, right? A packed menu with all sorts of colors and everything else screams to me way busy, doesn't concentrate, not educated. A 40% white space menu, sleek, sophisticated, right down the middle.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Let's talk to Mary Lou. Mary Lou.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Just another question. It just came to me as I was leaving. As a chef, and if you are not the actual owner of the facility, but you are the head chef, should you be gun-ho on what you want on your menu, or should you talk to the owners and know what price range you're working with? Or
you asked me another yes, no, and maybe question. And well, this is what's going to happen, and this is exactly what happens. Ownership has one primary interest, right? Money, right? So whenever I would write new menus, or when I still write new menus, I have to do what's called an ROI, right? It's called a return on investment, right? So whenever I have to change menus, it's an expense that the ownership has to incur, right? The owner has to pay money out, printing costs, training costs, inventory costs, right? I have to be able to go to the ownership and justify. Your enthusiasm, Mary Lou, is exactly what you need to do. But when you go to ownership, you need to be able to justify, hey, right? This item I want to get rid of is only 2% of our menu sales. What I'm projecting that we put on our menu is going to bring us X amount more revenue, and it's also going to be a better balance to our menu. And ownership's going to go, oh, more money? Okay. Yeah. So it kind of works in that fashion.
But at the same time, as a chef yourself, you need to be open. If you're gung-ho on, okay, this is what I want. For example, I want cordon bleu every night, and you know that it's not selling. As a chef, should you be able to take that concept of, it's not selling, owners telling you get rid of it?
I'm so glad you're asking this question, as this is a beautiful question. Earlier in class, we talked about this tonight, and it's called separating yourself from your business, right? Mm-hmm. I have certain desires of food that I want to serve, but is it best for the restaurant? Is it best for the business? Is it best for my customers, right? And that's a really distinct line that you have to learn to draw, and it takes a lot of self-discipline to be able to do that. I have had some in my own restaurants. I've had several restaurants that I've had some of the best culinary ideas that a Scoffier would roll over in his grave if you knew about them. But you know what? They didn't make any money. Yeah. Okay. And so what good are they? Yeah. And you really have to learn to make a separation between what you want and what is best for the business, because a lot of times they're not the same thing.
Okay.
So that's really
Thank
where it
you.
comes into play. You're welcome. Any other questions? Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I want to just reiterate the thing about attendance. Do not go more than 3 days in this class without posting attendance. We would really appreciate that. And once again, if you have any questions, please pick up the phone and call. We'll be glad to talk to you. You can call or text. We are here to help you. Your assignment, get it in by Sunday, please. This gives Chef Matthew plenty of time to turn around and get it graded. Great class tonight. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. And we will see you next Thursday. Take care.
Hey, great